Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Uh, my name is Sue Wenda Lewis, and I'm here today to present you the training on what's so important about communication. It's currently 12:59. I'm going to go ahead and allow an additional 1 to 2 minutes so that presenters can, I'm sorry, so that you guys can continue logging in and preparing to hear this training today. So I am here. We're going to start the training about 2 minutes. Alrighty, thank you. All right, everyone. I am going to go ahead and begin as I see the numbers have increased and they're at a great point. So I'm going to go ahead and start this presentation for the sake of time. And as I was waiting for individuals to join, I was reading over the comments and I hesitated on if I should say something now or something later. But I think it's just so awesome by just reading the title. A comment was made how communication is fundamental in every aspect of our lives. And yes, that is so true. We're going to touch upon that as we go deeper and deeper into this training. So awesome. That was a good segue into our training. So today I'm going over, as I stated, what's so important about communication. My name is Sue Wenda Lewis. I'm an inclusion specialist at the Early Learning Coalition. All right, so before we begin, as always, I know a few of you guys have been here and we've gone through this, but I just want to make sure, just in case we have any first timers on our webinar, to go over a few housekeeping items. So the chat box, I want you guys to know that you do have access to that, as I am aware because I see you guys already using it, which is great. So if you click on the icon at the top of the toolbar, you can use the send or the drop down menu to select recipients and who you want to send message to. There's 3 ways we can send messages. You can send it to everyone. That means everyone on this platform today will receive that message. You can send it to the organizer only, which is myself, or you can pick an individual attendee name. Let's say you see one of your colleagues on there and for some reason you want to send a message, you can use that. Or someone posted a resource and you wanted to ask them where that resource came from, because you missed it, you can send it individually to that person as well. We also have handouts that's available today on our training. So if you look on the portion that says handout and you drop down, you'll see something that says strategies to promote language development. and then an all checklist from 2 months to 5-year-old. Please, please, please take this time right now to click on those handout, because once the training ends, you'll no longer have access to the handouts. So at this time, please do click on them. They're great resources, and you can use them throughout your career in regards to language development and communication for our kiddos. And then the last thing is hand raising. If you do have a question, you can type it in the chat box, but for some reason, if I don't see you, there's a little orange hand on the side toolbar. When the arrow is pointing up, that means your hand is raised and you have a question. If the arrow icon is pointing down, that means you do not have a question at that given moment, and I will proceed. So that's our housekeeping information, all righty? Moving forward, attendance, credits, pre, post test, and evaluation. Going over, so starting July 1st, for those of you that have attended trainings, you will already see that all trainings have a pre and a post. It's 3 questions to answer when you register. And then upon completing the training today, a post will appear with 3 questions, and 5 training survey questions will launch as well. Please, please, please do take the time to complete that information. It's very valuable for us as trainers and the ELC to know what it is that you guys are seeking and what additional trainings or support you guys are needing as we move on. So all Early Learning Coalition of Broward County trainings are for in-service hours only. It's important to note. Your training certificate, you don't have to email us about it. It will be emailed to you within 24 hours of ending the training session, and it's going to be sent to the email address in which you use to register for this training today. Keep in mind, in order to be marked as attended, you must log in on the computer or download the GoToWebinar app on your phone. So what that means is just registering doesn't help us with attendance. If you're on the phone, we will not have you marked as attendance. So if you can't see the screen, that means we can't see you, and you would not be marked as attending the session. So if you do plan on receiving a certificate today for the in-service hours that's provided, make sure that you are using the computer or your phone, but actually logging in onto the GoToWebinar application so that we can make sure you are counted in today. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Duenda Lewis, as I stated before. I was born and raised in Broward County. I am Haitian, so I do speak English as well as Creole. I have a master's in developmental disabilities. It's a master's in science. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I have a certification in assisting and teaching students who have autism and providing therapy for them. I am class observer training in infant, toddler, and pre-K, which assists me in doing these trainings and giving some of the knowledge that I need to move forward. I'm a TA coach. I'm TA coach and certified, and I have over 7 years in the field of early childhood education. I do have a question before I move on. Someone's asking where's the audio pin. You're new to the webinar. So on the toolbar on the side, you can write questions or raise your hand. There's not necessarily somewhere where I'm currently using today that you can talk back to me. So I hope that answered your question in regards to the audio. Alrighty, so we are going to go ahead and move forward. So introduction to communication. So what is communication? What's the big idea? What's so important about communication? That's what I'm going over today. Communication is the ability to interact with another person. That can be through the means of verbal or nonverbal communication using devices, pointing, gesturing. And we're going to go into verbal and nonverbal communication in a bit. Communication is a collaborative process through which 2 or more individuals connect and share meaning around thoughts, ideas, and feelings. Yes, so communication does include 2 or more individuals. If you're talking to yourself, that does not count. And communication is a collaborative process that's developed from birth. Communication, it's important to understand that it involves speech and language. This is sometimes a little complex because the words are used interchangeably, but we're going to go ahead and differentiate between the three different words and give meaning to them so that we have a better understanding. So from the image that you see on the screen currently, you'll see that there's communication, and that's that bigger circle. So communication is the overall view of everything. And then within communication, we have language and speech. And then within language, we have speech. So I'm going to break this all down to you, but keep those three terms in mind. So you have communication, and then under communication, we have language, and then we have speech. So what exactly do we mean by speech, language, and communication? So when we talk about speech, it means it's the sound children use to build up words, sing sounds accurately in the right places. That's what we talk about when we're talking about speech. When we talk about communication, we're dealing with the way in which language is used, and like I said prior, to interact with one another or other individuals. And then by language, we mean both talking, expressive language, as well as receptive language. And we're going to go into that more in depth. So keep in mind, that's exactly what we mean by speech, language, and communication. So under speech, speech is the act of expression or describing thoughts, feelings, or perception by the articulation of words. So articulation of the words is what we're mainly focused on when we're talking about speech. It has to do with more of the articulation and clarity of what it is that you're saying. So some example of what I mean by speech and articulation might be a client who has difficulty pronouncing the word, the sound for S. So instead of saying sun, an individual would pronounce it as ton. Or another example of this might be instead of saying girl, a child may say gals, or not gals, I'm sorry, girls, instead of pronouncing that R sound that's in girls. So client whose speech is difficult to understand typically has to do with speech and articulation. But it's important to know that speech sound, like any other of our developmental milestones, such as the walking, the feeding, the getting dressed, learning, it all takes practice and mastery. So we have to go through the practice and repetition so that we can get there. And then another thing to always remember is that throughout the developmental process, certain speech sounds or articulation for words are developed based off various age range. So just because that child that's not currently pronouncing the S sound and saying ton instead of sun, doesn't mean that that sound will not be developed. Certain sounds for each of the letters are developed later in life or at different developmental milestones. So this chart here that I have is a great representation, and I love it because as I was creating the training, I'm like, gee whiz, I see the P, I see the M, I see the H, but making sure that I give you guys examples of what each one mean was very crucial, or the sound that each one makes was important. So if you can see by the first example that was there, it's the sound for P, as in pit. So typically a child would acquire the articulation or pronunciation for that P at the age of 2. So the shaded area shows typically when a child will acquire those articulation or speech sounds for the letters that are listed on here. So when we look at mom, that happens between 2 to 3 years old, having the ability to make that sound that's needed to pronounce the word mom. And then we look further down, we go to duck. There's more to that, as you can see, as the D and duck. Typically, the correct and clear pronunciation is established between 3 and 4. So it's not to say that a child is experiencing communication disorders or communication delays when they're unable or haven't acquired the skill to developmentally pronounce the sound or articulate the sound that is made through each of these letters. So keep in mind, just like typical development and we have milestones to reach in life, with speech, there are certain milestones or letters that are achieved, the speech sound, later or in different phases of development in our lives. Now we move into language, right? Because I said there was that communication, and under that communication we have speech, and then we have language as well. So when we refer to language, it's the scientific study of language. It's called linguistics. That's what it's called. So it's important to know the role that language plays in the overall process of communication. Remember, they're intertwined all together. So people around the world use specific language to communicate, exhibit the fact that language and communication are intertwined. Language is the communication of thoughts and feelings through a system of signals such as voice, sound, gestures, or written symbols. That's going to be some of our verbal or nonverbal communication skills, right? And then language is a system of communication that relies on verbal and nonverbal codes to transfer information. And we're going to go into that as we move. Verbal and nonverbal communication. So verbal is the use of words to convey a message. Some forms of verbal communication have to do like written or oral communication. That's our verbal communication. And then we have nonverbal, which happens early on in life before we're able to verbally communicate, right? And those are facial expression, eye gaze, body posture and movement, changes in muscles and tone and gestures. So you can tell how verbal and nonverbal go together because sometimes someone can be saying something to us, but their nonverbal cues or their body cues might be exhibiting something different. So it's important to understand the role that each plays so that we can learn to effectively communicate. And that's how that intertwines with the overall picture of communication when we're talking about language. What about Spanish speakers and pronunciations is a question that I received. So it's as a rule of thumb is communication language is the same across the board. You just switch it off into your native language. So the same way that a child in English would pronounce different sounds, that's the same way it would run across if it was another language as well. So for instance, in Creole, those sounds will go into those various developmental milestones if that answer your question. So the art of communication, language, and speech doesn't necessarily change. It's something that happens automatically as we go through development. And what we hear in our environment, if that child's a dual language learner or bilingual, they're still going to go through that same process, and the still definition will still stick in regards to the pronunciation in other languages. Now, there might be some exceptions to the rule based off the Spanish language and the Creole language that goes more into depth. But today, it's definitely the English version of it. But keep in mind, the concept still remains the same. I hope that answered your question. All right, so let's move forward. All right, so language continues. So when we talk about language, it's important to know that we have receptive language and we have expressive language. So when we talk about receptive, it's the ability to understand verbal language. You're more than welcome. So when I say verbal language, receptively, it's the input. What's coming in those ears? You know how they say things are going in one ear and out the other? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about receptive, but hopefully it doesn't go out the other and it stays in there. It's that input. So it's being able to answer questions, differentiating what versus where question, and following direction, such as put in, take out, give me. If I say come here, jump 3 times, that's all form of receptive language. So some students, you'll see they have that skill set, and usually sometimes it will be stronger receptively than what it is expressively. So when we talk about expressive, it's the output. What exactly is coming out? Right now, I'm communicating expressively to you guys. It's the ability to communicate wants and needs and ideas, and that's through the words. So requesting an item or activity, right? Using complete sentences, labeling items or action. The girl is jumping. I am hungry. I am sleepy. Those are all expressive communication. Requesting help. I need help. I need assistance. Those are all expressive language. Pointing to something is expressive language because you're being able to expressively say or communicate what it is that you actually want or need or requesting. So remember, receptive, it's what goes in the ear. expressive is what comes out, and it's being able to communicate to another individual. Alrighty. Now, I want to make sure that you guys are with me before I move over, because I know that this was a lot of information as we break down the three. So I'm checking for understanding. Pop quiz. We all have our chat box. Let's go in that chat box. Communication involves both speech and language. Is that true or false? Let's see what we have here. You can use the chat box. Whoa, it was a slow start. I got really nervous. I thought I had to backtrack. Excellent. That is true. That is true. That is true. I honestly, I have no falses. This is all true. Excellent. That means you guys are with me. Beautiful. I'm happy to hear that. So yes, communication involves both speech and language. Let's move forward. So this is just a visual. I know people can understand things using different modalities. So here's the umbrella here. And under the umbrella, we have communication. Then we have the red end of communication that expresses language. And under language, we have our receptive language and our expressive language. Then on the blue end of the umbrella, we have our speech. It has to do the pragmatics, the social exchange, as well as speech, sound, and production. So that's our whole visual of what it is that I was just expressing to you and how we communicate, the language portion of it and the speech portion of communication. All right. Moving on. So language development period. How to lay the foundation for communication. It is very, very, very important that we know that there are, just like we know with speech, there's certain time frames where sounds or clarity or pronunciation is put into place. There's also time frames in regard to language and development where we have to go through these prerequisites till we get to the top portion. So from the top of the pyramid, you can see that speech, sounds, and clarity and pronunciation, that's at the very top of our pyramid. So that's something that's learned completely at the top of the development of a child. So at the bottom, it's important to see that we have pre-verbal or early interactions. So there's eye contact, there's turn taking, there's joint attention, there's pointing. These are some of the beginning things that we need in order to help our children facilitate language and communication. And as that pyramid continues to build upon itself, the skills become more difficult and more concrete in what it is that we're establishing. So areas at the bottom of the pyramid must be in place before you can work on areas at the top of the pyramid. There will be some exceptions depending on different diagnoses, but for the most part, typically that's the order that we must go into. So attention and listening, being able to pay attention, and that goes in listening. That goes back to our receptive communication. If you're not even listening to me, how can you take in what I'm telling you receptively so you can follow through? So waiting, looking, listening, completing short tasks are all important. Being able to play, functional play, symbolic play, imaginative play, that help us build those language and communication skills through play and learning and expanding on there. And an understanding, following directions, that's our receptive skill, and understanding questions comes in. And once we have our receptive, like I told you, being that input, then that output, talking, signing, vocabulary, grammar, that later comes into play. And then lastly, like I've mentioned in the very beginning, is our speech, sound, and clarity and pronunciation. So this language developmental pyramid I thought was a great tool because it actually shows you the step-by-step process. So when kids are playing, and I know a lot of you guys as early educators, you hear a lot about kids learning through play. There's so much to learn through play. There's so much language that's encompassed through play. And it's children doing what it is that they enjoy. And through that, you facilitating or expanding on that helps that child to learn new language or learn new words so that that child can later express his or herself. All right. All right, so stages of language development. So we have our babbling, that's 6 to 8 months. We have our one word, 9 to 18 months. We have our true word stage, which is 18 to 24 months, our telegraphic stage, which is usually 24 to 30 months, and then our latter multi-word stage, which is 30 plus months. So when we talk about babbling, it's repetitive CV patterns. And then when we talk about one word stage, it's a single one open class word or word stems. Two words is many sentence with simple thematic relationship, go, buy, more, eat, things of that nature. Telegraphic sentence structures are lexical rather than functional or grammatical. And then grammatical or functional structures has to do with the latter multi-word stage. I know this is a lot, so I got a video to sum it up for us so that we can see what it is that I'm actually talking about, and it will give examples of each stages so that the reading doesn't just help us, so that we can actually see in here. So I'm going to transition over to a video so that we can see the stages of development. Awesome. So I hope that video assisted you in reference to understanding the different stages of development in regards to language. All right, moving forward. So now that we went over the speech, the language, and communication, I'm going to just give you guys a summary of it all. So by speech, we mean the speech sounds children use to build up words, saying sounds accurately and in the right places. It's speaking fluently without hesitating, prolonging, or repeating words or sounds. It's speaking with expression and a clear voice using pitch, volume, and intonation to support meaning. When we talk about communication, let's jump to language. When we talk about language, we mean both talking expressively and understanding of language receptively. It's having words to describe objects, actions, and attributes. It's using the words to build up sentences. It's using the sentences to build up conversation and narratives about different things that's actually taking place. And it's following the rules of grammar so that things make sense. Now, as far as communication, what do we mean? By communication, we mean the way in which language is used to interact with others, using language in different ways to question, clarify, or describe debate. Using nonverbal cues or communication, listening, looking, knowing how to take verbal turns, and how to change language used to suit the situation, all has to do with communication. And the ability to take into account others' perspective, intentions, and wider context all have to do with communication. It's important to know that we need all three elements in order to get our message across. They almost run all interchangeably. Each of the three elements are multifaceted and multi-layered, meaning each of them encompass different things. As we went over, we saw that speech included articulation. We saw that language actually included the receptive and the expressive. And we know that when we look at the whole grand scheme of things, that's our communication. Without aspects of any of these elements, what children say and understand can become confused. With all of these elements, children can maximize their attainment. So now that we have our background understanding, the big question, why is communication so important in early childhood development? What makes it so important and why do we need it? You can use this time now to go into the chat box and just type, why do you think it's so important in early childhood development? So why is communication so important? And it doesn't have to be anything lengthy. Just why do you think it's important? So I have that it helps us to express our feelings. It helps kids learn to talk. So everyone knows what is going on for child development. Awesome. Those are all great, great, great responses in regards to why it's important in early childhood development. Beautiful job. Excellent. All right. So the importance of communication in children. So we know that communication is key. Someone said it's important to transmit message, emotions. That's true. Express our feelings. It's a part of our life. It is a part of our life. That's a good one. Excellent. So that children can be comfortable to talk to someone. Beautiful job. Beautiful job. And I'm going to get into all of those. Excellent job. If we don't have communication, we would have a hard time learning to express ourselves. Communication is important to develop. Great job. You guys are amazing. So communication is key. Communication is the fundamental to children's development. Children need to be able to understand and be understood. Not only just children, us as individuals need to be able to understand and be understood. An example of this is I went to Paris last year and they were talking French, and I don't speak French because Creole and French is two different languages. So in doing so, it was so hard to communicate and know where it was that I was going or how to even receive information that I needed. And I had a hard time and I became very, very, very frustrated. And the same thing happened when I went to a trip back to back. I went to Spain and I went to Mexico, and the Spanish language in Ibiza, and the Spanish language, I was having a hard time. So I told myself, you know what, I am not going on another trip if I don't know the language in which it's spoken or have an understanding of what's taking place. So just as difficult it was for me to understand or be understood, that's how it is for our children too. And I had the developmental milestones available, but that language made it hard for me. And I didn't like it one bit. So you can almost imagine how children feel in that same scenario of not being able to express yourself or understand or be understood. Communication is the foundation of relationships, and it is essential for learning, play, and social interaction. If I can't communicate with you, it's hard for me to interact with you. Sometimes kids become mute in regards to that scenario because they are unable to communicate. And communicating with babies is the foundation of attachment. And language is the vehicle for learning, like one of you guys mentioned. Once you're able to have that language, it opens up the horizons to so many different things that are taking place in our lives. And it helps kids learn new words when they're able to communicate or is involved in communication. So just as we say what happens when you do have communication, I thought it was important to understand what happens without communication skills. When children with speech and language needs are at high risk of difficulties with reading, writing, and spelling. When children are unable to communicate, it allows for difficulties and more likely to have behavior difficulties because I'm unable to express myself. I become upset, I become frustrated. And we know when someone becomes upset and frustrated, they may act out in different ways. So that might heighten behaviors in our children. Friendships are incredibly important for children. Making and keeping friends is difficult if you have poor communication skills. If a child's unable to communicate with their peers, it's hard for them to sustain relationships with the kids. And then self-esteem and confidence is affected. Children with communication needs often see themselves as less able and less popular than their friends. Another thing is, although I did speak two languages and I'm able to communicate effectively in both language, my husband speaks one language. So sometimes it does affect his self-esteem or confidence when he's unable to grasp onto small things. There's some things in Spanish that when I hear, because it sounds like the word in Creole, I'm probably able to have an understanding. But with him, it's a blank slate because the only language he speaks is English. So it's like, and he hasn't been exposed to having to be forced to speak Spanish or speak Creole. So it does sometimes affect his self esteem and confidence, not being able to understand or communicate in that way. And then communication impacts all areas of life. That impacts your social being, that impacts your job that you have, that impacts your relationship in which you have, that impacts your education. Communication impacts all areas of life. And it's important that we build these communication skills in our children earlier and have an understanding of them so that we're able to better assist them. Yes, I did attach the CDC milestone. Under there, there is a section that has information on communication, and it specifies for each developmental level what's expected, or what's typically, I should say, expected of our children. It's important to, someone said it's important to encourage our bilingual children to keep both language in order to communicate. Yes, it is important. A lot of times as educators, it's thought to eliminate or to go into the English language. It's important that that child still be able to communicate in their native language. And we as professionals try to learn some of the basic language words that's in that language and help us communicate with that child, make that connection so that we can open up a greater horizon with that child. But yes, it is important that we speak in that child's native language or have an understanding or try to understand that child so we can label and connect things together in both languages. And no, it doesn't make sense to drop one. You should, in most cases, you'll keep both. All right. So, developing a child's communication skill. This is another video that I want you guys to watch in regards to our communication skills. So I thought that was a great video to give us an understanding or summarize communication skills. I thought it was great actually listening to her talk, that she was actually from another part of the world where her accent was different, but she was still able to effectively communicate. And though some sounds were articulated or the speech was different, she was still able to express or communicate herself. We do know that based off where you are from or different areas, your articulation of certain sounds might be different. So that was important to note in that video. All right, learning to communicate. Strategies for infants and toddlers. So when we're teaching our infants and toddlers to communicate, now that we know that the importance of it, it's important that we model and imitate sounds and facial expressions with our babies. We respond to babies' effort to communicate, and we play simple games such as peekaboo and use animated voices and actions to identify and listen to different sounds. It's important to learn to say some words or phrases in a child's home or language if different from yours. That's what we spoke about. That's what we talked about when we went over the being a dual language learner or being bilingual. Use auto recordings or family members' voices, and use a large and variety vocabulary in correct context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the strategies for infant and toddlers, and we're going to watch a video on seeing how this plays out. And then we'll go into preschool and we'll watch a video and see how exactly how it plays out as well. So other strategies that's used for infant and toddlers in order to assist in communication is you describe actions and activity with infants and toddlers, typically known as like scripting or mapping out. You talk to them as you're changing their diapers. Yes, I'm changing your diaper. I'm going to wipe you. The wipe is going to be cold. All right, I'm going over, I'm going to throw this diaper in the garbage. Things of that nature as are mapping the description. Or I see that you're playing with the car. You have a blue car in your hand. Those are all forms of the tone of expressing what's actually being said and using our expressions. Understand that crying is an infant and toddler's way of communicating, making every effort to meet their needs. The child is crying. You figure out that that child is hungry. Oh, you're crying because you're hungry. We're pairing and connecting those two concepts so that that child will later learn that, okay, instead of crying, I can say I'm hungry or milk or whatever it is that the child's trying to express. Some difficult behaviors are developmentally typical for a child without words to express himself. Some of those behaviors in which we talk about is biting. At the age of 2, we know that biting is typical for a 2-year-old because they're unable to fully communicate them. And what other way is there to communicate or get your needs met instead of biting someone? Again, you want to treat them as a child's way of communicating, but afterwards you want to teach and replace that appropriate communication skill and give them the language that they need. That's the only way that we'll be able to eliminate some of the behaviors that we don't want to see, and will help that child better express themselves. Engage a child's sense when communicating. I'm touching your toes. Oh, you have 10 toes. Oh my geez, my fingers are crawling up your arms. Those are all ways that we can engage a child's sense when we're communicating. That's your nose. Do you smell? Do you smell that? Do you smell what's there? Those are all ways that we can use a child's senses when communicating, as well as teaching them as we move forward. You want to model correct use of language as that child develops. You want to play language through song, rhymes, and finger plays. That all helps us. What is it? Mommy pig, where are you? Oh, I see, yeah. Here I am. How do you do? Is it mommy finger? One of those. But we can use the songs and finger plays to assist our children in communication and language. So those are all ways that we can facilitate this. So here I'm going to play a video in regards to parenting. It's from Parenting Counseling. Babies learn sounds and words from you. Well, I really, really, really enjoy watching that video because, as you can see, the caregiver, the male, he's talking and communicating to the child and expressing what that child is thinking or attempting to say, and is verbally repeating it, calling the parentese. And it's helping that child facilitate or learn language just by the dad or caregiver expressing and talking to the baby. So that's an example of how it looks when we talk about our infant and toddlers and how we can help facilitate and assist them through language development and being able to communicate. So as we move forward, when we talk about our I'm sorry. So that was our infant. So I have another video in regards to a toddler, a 19-month-old Kingston, who's captured the hearts of many, many viewers and having a conversation with his dad on the couch. So I'm going to show you guys this video. And keep in mind, I wanted to find natural videos and not just classroom videos, because I think, not that I think, communication goes beyond the classroom. Like you guys said in the beginning, it's everyday life. It's the way of living. It's how we express ourselves. So I didn't want it to make it seem like it's only something instructional that we do. But what's so important about communication? It's so important that it happens throughout our life. So I wanted to show natural videos or videos outside of the education system that shows how we can facilitate communication. And we can easily bring this in our classroom just by looking at these examples and having the understanding of what it looks like in all of these levels. So that's why I did put in these type of videos. They're not your typical classroom videos, but it shows the interaction of communication, and communication expands beyond the classroom. All right, so here's our next video. So in that video, we saw well, it was a father and a son that was communicating. And although the son didn't really have the articulation or the actual speech portion of communication or the language, he was still effectively able to communicate with his father. And through that, you can see his needs are met because they're going in this back and forth exchange, and the father's providing language and words and understanding to what it is that the him and his child is watching or having a conversation about. So in that video, you can see that it's still that persistence that's taking place. Communication is still happening there. There's still some bond and relationship that's being built there, and that's allowing that child to be able to persist forward and keep communicating, keep communicating. And that is when that the child learns that, okay, my words have meaning and understanding. And I can only imagine that child's like, he understands me. He gets what I'm saying because they're the body language, the nonverbal cues, the verbal cues, they all were so in sync that it seemed as though that they were together in communicating what was taking place, and the father was effectively able to assist the child and bring words to what it is that he was trying to say. There was that understanding. So that's a 19-month-year-old. All right. So now when we talk about learning to communicate strategy for preschoolers, we want to use animated, expressive, and rich language, words, facial expression, body language with children. At this age, the children are more advanced and they're able to pick up on certain language cues and verbal and nonverbal cues. You want to speak slowly and clearly so that all children can understand. I learned that I had to, and teaching kids, I learned that I had to slow down my speech so that children can understand and hear all the words that I'm articulating so that they could actually understand and repeat or expand on whatever it was that I was communicating to them. Enrich children language experience by introducing new vocabulary words and concepts and use them regularly in natural context. So, for instance, earlier today, I was talking to my nephew about, I heard him playing a game and he was, I guess he repeated, I guess it was a tycoon. And I was like, okay, that's a big word. What's going on there? What do you mean when you're saying tycoon? And then from that natural experience, we were able to break down the word, look it up, describe it, and figure out what it means and put it in context. And not just in the game that he was playing, but by hearing those new words and new vocabulary, you're able to expand that child's words. You want to provide clear instruction, use visual cues, and provide for wait time for children to understand and comply. And not only children, as you guys know, I like to add adults in this. In communicating, I know when I speak to my husband, I'm a rambler. I go, 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 and I don't stop, pause, and think. But when he's communicating with me and trying to effectively communicate something, he pauses, he thinks in his sentence. And for me, it drives me crazy. So I start to try to finish his words or phrases because that pause or that gap there, it's so uncomfortable for me. But it's important to understand in kids, we need, and adults, we need to allow for that time frame in between because during that time frame, it gives that child that opportunity to think and actually come up with an answer. And in this, sometimes if we're so quick to respond for that child and we don't give them that time to wait or understand, children will learn, okay, if I stay silent a little longer, I won't even have to respond because that teacher or that individual will move on and I won't even have to express anything. So it's important that we have clear instruction, we use visuals, and we provide that wait time for children to understand and comply what it is that we're actually stating or expressing or trying to communicate. And then visual cues. When we pair our words with visuals, if a child hasn't obtained the skill set yet, visuals are great. And I know we've went through so many training in regards to having those visual schedules or the visual cue cards, and we pair it with our language and our communication so that our children can see the visual, hear the words, and have an understanding of what's taking place in order to follow through. You want to have extended conversation with children in groups and individually. Use open-ended questions, reflective listening, and other strategies. It's not just our closed-ended questions. Did you have a good day? Yes, no. Why was your day good? Tell me about your days. Those open-ended questions helps our children to be able to think and understand what's actually taking place and being able to facilitate that response. And when they're able to do that, that initially helps them effectively communicate and it helps them practice those skills. Like I said in the beginning, communication is a lifelong skill. And just like our other areas of development, we need to allow for that practice and being able to articulate ourselves appropriately. You want to use reflective listening, being able to listen and follow through, as well as other strategies with our expressive and expressive communication. Moving forward in regards to strategy with preschools, you want to play with language and sound with games, songs, rhymes, and repetition. That makes it fun. I have a friend of mine that through her instruction, she changes the words for her math concept from popular pop rap songs that are out currently. And just by the kids hearing those tunes, they're able to have a better concept and their interest is grasped. So that helps them with their language and sound. You model good social conversational skills. We do that through our means of communicating with our children. You model communication through a variety of avenues. You can use signs, pictures, gestures, words, everything in which we spoke about. You want to support interaction with children who may have difficulty engaging with others. Sometimes it can include the dual language learners or children with disability or shy children. You as the teacher, you can come in and facilitate a interaction between peers and assist that child that needs assistance in communicating. Let's say you get two children together and we're going to roll the ball back and forth. You can assist that child by engaging in the interaction with the other child and allowing that child to put meaning to what's actually taking place. We're rolling the ball back and forth so that the child can have a better understanding of what's taking place. And it helps children expand on their thinking when we actually persist and go back and forth and that quality of feedback and conversation with our kids, with our children. So here's a video. I believe this video is a video in regards to the classroom, but this is developing oral language skills in the preschool children and how it goes a bit deeper and how we want to expand further for our children that's at the preschool age range. So the video that we just saw was a video in regards to our preschool classroom. So I want to take this time to allow you guys to type in the chat box. What were some effective things that you saw that the teacher was exhibiting or showing in her classroom to the children that was there? So I'm going to give you about a minute to type in the chat box. Let's discuss some of the things that we saw in this video. I think there was a lot that was encompassed, and I want to make sure we were able to reach all of those highlighted areas. But see that someone said that the teacher was making open-ended question. Yes, the teacher used a lot of open-ended questions so the child was able to expand on the response so that it wasn't just simple one word or two word answer. And if it was a one word or two word answer, the teacher allowed ask an additional question so that the child can expand on that. Um, Repeating, yes, that's a good one. The teacher repeated phrases or words so that it was clear and concise and actually expanded on it. Good job, excellent. She was asking open-ended question, the parallel talking, beautiful, expanding the language, beautiful. You guys are with me. Those are all things that was exhibited throughout the video. The children were actually interacting with the teacher. Yes, open-ended question again, expanding vocabulary, Goldilocks, checking for clarification, giving new words meaning. Yes, those are all things that was observed through the video. Excellent job. And then one thing that I like is that the teacher waited for the children to respond. She didn't jump and move ahead or allow someone else to answer. She waited for that child to respond to the question that was asked, relating the children in the reading. Yes, she related them back and forth with questions. Yes, that was all there. And that's all important when we're talking about our preschoolers and their communication and how we're able to foster it and allow it to grow and how we're able to give their words meaning and expand on them. Those are all important concepts. And look, you guys are able to pick this up just through watching a video. Those are things that we should be doing in our classroom so that we can help our children communicate and express themselves. Those are all great things. The teacher was confident in what she wants. She was. And in turn, the children were confident in the classroom and provide answers that were appropriate based off what it is she said. And even when one was like grandma and mom, she checked for clarification. Who's right? Who's wrong? So that the kids could continue communicating. Excellent job. Excellent job. So how to stimulate language development. So this is school age and beyond. You want to keep the conversation going. That's back and forth or feedback loops, answering questions and posing questions and going forth in that conversation. Where did you go this weekend? And the child responds, the beach. Okay, so now let's go in our back and forth feedback loops. Okay, who did you go to the beach with? I went to the beach with mommy, daddy, and cousin. Oh, which cousin did you go to the beach with? Cousin Susie. Oh, cousin Susie. If you know any background information, did she come in town? Yes, cousin Susie came in town. Well, what did you guys do at the beach? We made sand castles, we ate pizzas and hot dogs, and I saw some fireworks. So you open up that horizon so that child could be able to further communicate and go back and forth. And once the child's communicating and going back and forth, that opens up the avenue to help develop the language and communication skills in our children. Have family meetings. That's something parents can do, or you can do classroom meetings or classroom brain checks and having conversation. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes it doesn't even have to be something that's so structured or so organized. It should be something that happened naturally. You just sitting down during lunchtime and having conversation with your children in the lunchroom, or even while you're outside playing, you probably providing mapping of what's actually taking place on the playground. Oh, you're playing on the swing with your friend Sally. or you're pushing her back and forth. Those are all ways that we can help stimulate language and development. When you go out to dinner, keep the electronics at home or turned off. That helps because now we're able to verbally communicate, as the video we watched earlier outlined. And then after seeing a movie or TV show together, talk about what happened. Just like the dad and the son, they were talking about the season finale of the show Empire that they were watching. And it seems like they were both on the same page because they were expressing like what exactly happened. But that language and that rich environment of language helps that child effectively communicate later on in life. You want to encourage reading. When they finish a book, ask about their thoughts and feelings about the book. What took place in the book? What did you like? What did you dislike about the book? What did the character do in the story? These things help. Having that literacy rich environment that helps the child to develop those language skills and further develop more complex skills later in life. So that's important that we look into that and we use it to help our children develop. So in conclusion, for me, the way to sum this all up is that communication is not only the essence of being a human, but it's also a vital property of life. As we discussed throughout the training, communication is all over. It's used through all stages in development of life. Communication is lifelong. We're always learning, we're always emerging, but those are the importance of communication that we outlined today. We use communication in school, we use communication at home, we use communication everywhere. Communication is so important and it helps us express ourselves. It gives that child that self-esteem that that child needs. It gets your needs met and you have that understanding. You're able to follow through. You're able to understand when we do have those communication skills. So that is my training on communication. A lot of the resources in which I found was found on Talk to Me Baby. They have great, great, great resources. PBS Parenting has information, 0 to 3. The CDC, that's where the checklists come from in regards to the different areas of development for our children. And the Communication Trust also has great information in regards to our children learning. So it's important to understand that communication is the overall umbrella of our speech and language. And we know that learning to communicate happens at birth. It happens immediately. We're learning through those cooing and through those babbling and through that eye contact and that eye gaze. Those are all forms of communication that happens at birth. We know that when we talk about speech, it's with the articulation of words and the pragmatics of words. When we talk about language, it's what we're actually able to communicate. We have that expressive communication. We have that receptive communication. We have the nonverbal and we have the verbal communication. Those are all forms of language. And together, those all come together to provide us with communication. So what's so important about communication? That's what's so important about communication. It affects all areas of our lives. So when you go into that classroom, make it something that you do automatically. Make it something fun. Make it something that happens natural when you're talking, just like the videos that we saw, that you're helping foster those development in our children. Once again, my name is Suwenda Lewis. I have my email here. Is there any questions or anything that I was not able to go over that you would like to know about communication, language, and speech? I'm so happy that you guys are getting the meaning of communication through my presentation. Excellent. Any questions or anything that I did not touch upon in regards to this? So I have a takeaway for you guys. What's one thing that you feel like you can take back into the classroom based off the various age ranges that you work with? What's one thing that you think you can take back to the classroom to better assess or better help develop your children's language, speech language development? Let's give one takeaway, no matter what age group that you work with. What's one thing you want to try to incorporate moving forward? You can use the chat box to answer. So if someone said that lots of open-ended questions, excellent. We know that open-ended question helps that children being able to actually think and facilitate a answer to your question instead of the simple yes or no or one word responses. That's a great one to take back into the classroom. Open-ended questions open up a horizon to a lot of stuff, and that actually provide that back and forth feedback loops that we want to see. A lot of people ask more open-ended questions, all right? That's always a great one. How about just having simple conversation? If you're with the babies, the cooing that's taking place, the babbling, you saw the dad in the video. They had a great time, a ball, and that was just through the cooing and the babbling and using the verbal and nonverbal cues. Someone said increase vocabulary. That's another great one, especially with the older kids, giving them more words, giving their actions more meaning, and giving them words to expand upon. That's great. Your Spanish is so quick. Yeah, I think that's what happens with my Creole. My Creole is so quick. So I have to sometimes remind myself to slow down, Suenda. But yeah, that's something you can work on over time. And that will help you as an adult effectively communicate. So that is true. More songs. Yes, the songs, the finger play, and just talking in general. Great one. Just talking in general with our kiddos. I know, like, sometimes when I'm in the mood or I'm upset or I don't feel like communicating with an adult, I go to my nephew and I say, hey, let's talk. And I just talk to him. And you know why? Because they're there. Yes, there isn't any exact words that's coming out. They're unbiased. There isn't an opinion, and you can get it all off your chest, but you're still helping communicate what's actually taking place, and they're still learning. Give children more opportunity to express themselves so they can expand their vocabulary. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. For a while, I used to ask my nephew, how was school? Good. Okay, what does good mean? Let's go. Why was school good? What did you do in school that made it so good? So that he actually has that time frame to actually process that information and actually communicate and think about what took place in school instead of that runaway answer of good. Excellent. More conversation, more questions, more and more and more. Always need more. Yes. By reading more books with children from other languages. Yes, that's important. And even books that they can relate to culturally, that's a good one too, because when they can relate to something culturally, that helps motivate them as well. Create materials that show both language, like pictures and props. Absolutely. Visual cues are important. Visual cues should be used since day one of entering our school. So yes, that is those are great responses. Beautiful, excellent. Those are all great responses. So I do hope that you take this and that you incorporate these simple yet effective, natural things that you can do in the classroom to help take your child to that next level and help continue their growth and language development. So don't forget to download the handouts that's on here, because once the presentation closes out, you would no longer be able to download. So don't forget to download that before we end the training today. And keep in mind, we do have verbal and nonverbal communication. We have receptive and expressive communication. Those are all form of communication. And that is the end of the training. If you have any questions or need any further resources, please feel free to contact me or look up these websites. Just go into Google and type them in, and that will give you some information on speech language development and communication for children. All righty. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You guys stay safe, stay indoors, and continue assisting in language development of our children. You guys have a great afternoon. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this presentation. I hope you guys had an opportunity to download the handout. Keep in mind that the post will happen right when we end. Please feel free to answer the post as well as the survey questions. Have a great afternoon.